extrapolate a little bit. This is ultimately what Levinas thinks is the extremely problematic and flawed purpose of philosophy in general. To be able to grasp the world so as to have it all prepared for you, to not meet with the unexpected, to be well disposed to the world. Right? When we think about Aristotle or even Mill, the purpose of ethics is to be able to understand the world sufficiently so as to be able to anticipate and handle the things that are unexpected, the misfortunes and accidents of life. Right? You want to have a universal and comprehensive grasp of what is. This is the traditional idea. This is why metaphysics comes traditionally before ethics. We have to know what everything is, and then we can decide how to act. Levinas flips that and says ethics is prior to metaphysics. And this is what he's getting at here. Right? I can't hope to have a comprehensive metaphysics, a singular understanding of the world, because there is some, as he will say, irreducible otherness, an otherness that can't be reduced to my understanding of the world, that can't be incorporated into my understanding of the world. Right? So this fact of otherness, the fact that the other is the site of revelation, truth, apocalypse, etc., is why ethics has to come before metaphysics. Because my ethical relation to another person has the potential to undermine any metaphysical understanding of reality that I might come up with on my own, right? Through my own egoic philosophizing. So this return to an elemental sense of destiny, right, is the primitivism of Hitlerism, as Levinas calls it. It's not unique to Hitlerism, to Nazism at all. To attempt to grasp the world before encountering it, right? To attempt to grasp what life is like before you've lived all of it, or by only having lived one of them, is impossible. Right? What is life like? What is reality? I can never hope to know. That is Levinas's idea here. So when we attempt to grasp the world in this way, what we are in fact doing, Levinas thinks, is closing ourselves to otherness, right, and projecting ourselves onto the world. Right? I organize the world according to my understanding of it, and any understanding of it that is in conflict with that worldview, with my own worldview, I have to dismiss or eliminate. Right? And that is the essence of Hitlerism, of Nazism. To assume the world is as you yourself grasp it to be, and to try to force the world to fit into your picture of it. So he writes, the philosophy of Hitlerism therefore goes beyond the philosophy of Hitlerians. It's funny, 1934 language to discuss the Nazis, right? We could say Nazism goes beyond the philosophy of individual Nazis. He writes, it questions the very principles of a civilization. So Nazism is not, again, an anomalous belief held by individuals, but the emergence of Nazism questions the principles of a civilization, of Western civilization. So Nazism isn't confined to a group. It's not the Nazis themselves who are per se the problem. Nazism questions the Western tradition. It forces us to question those ideas that have reigned in Western philosophy. So he says, the conflict is played out not only between liberalism and Hitlerism. The duality between liberalism and fascism, this opposition is not incidental. Not that fascism grew up out of liberalism. They are conceived together, right? So in the original decision about politics and civilization, that is to say, in choosing liberalism, right, by embracing liberalism, one also embraces its opposites. Right? If we understand liberalism, this suddenly sounds weird to me. If we understand liberalism as the combination of democracy and capitalism, then we have to understand that by embracing that, we also embrace its alternatives, which are attached to it, fascism and communism being the two primary alternatives. He goes on, thinking about the tradition of liberalism, how liberal states, how the modern world of nation states is constituted, and how it can lead to Nazism. So on 65, he writes, political freedoms. What do we herald as the greatest value in liberalism? Freedom. Right? Political freedoms do not exhaust the content of the spirit of freedom. Political freedoms do not exhaust the content of the spirit of freedom. In other words, the freedoms that are provided by liberalism do not make us wholly free. The spirit of freedom is much greater. The freedom that we imagine in philosophy is much greater than the freedom that is given to us through political liberalism. So, do not exhaust the content of the spirit of freedom, a spirit that, in Western civilization, signifies a conception of human destiny. All right, so this larger spirit of freedom is contained in Western civilization is partially expressed through the political freedoms of liberalism, and it signifies a conception of human destiny, this larger spirit. This conception of destiny is a feeling that man is absolutely free in his relations with the world and the possibilities that solicit action from him. Man is renewed eternally in the face of the universe. Speaking absolutely, he has no history. Spirit of freedom in its entirety, as it's conceived in Western civilization, conceives of the human being as being completely free in his relations with the world, and thus free in his action. Right? Speaking absolutely, he has no history. Right? This kind of freedom that liberalism assumes, that the Western tradition assumes, is not conditioned by history. Humans are outside history. Again, we can think of Kant, right? Human beings are pure rationality, which is not in any way touched by the realm of appearances, by the practical realm. So political freedom is an expression of freedom itself, which is informed by an idea of destiny, the destiny which is Kantian, to be free to pursue our own ends. This conception of freedom and destiny solicits action. It's based on this assumption that we act. Right? So our actions follow from this idea of freedom and destiny. So I'm just going to read a little bit more. I think this is an interesting opening. This is where he gets into sort of the continuity of the Western tradition and how modernity, liberalism are a continuation of prior traditions. So he writes again on 65, beneath the melancholy of the eternal flow of things, Heraclitus's illusory present, there lies the tragedy of the irremovability of a past that cannot be erased and that condemns any initiative to being just a continuation. Now, right, what is the greatest obstacle to our freedom, this absolute freedom that we assume we have, that we grasp as being our elementary destiny? The past. The past is the greatest obstacle to our freedom. We can't do anything to change the past. And yet, Levinas thinks, our conception of freedom does permit some cryptic spiritual ability to exert control even over the irremovability of the past. He goes on, true freedom, the true beginning, would require a true present, which, always at the peak of destiny, forever